Cindy McCain is head of the World Food Program, and it's her job to make sure people don't starve. One of the most important parts of her work is delivering food to zones of war and conflict. And these days, her focus is very much on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
It's a monumental task because of the amount of people involved and because of the emotions. It's something, this is a terribly emotional issue to a lot of people. And our job is to give hope and help by giving food to those who really need it most. And that's what we do.
From the United Nations, I'm Melissa Fleming. This is Awake at Night. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
There are so many crises around the world where people don't have enough to eat. But I'd like to first ask you about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Of course, we experienced the most horrific attacks on October 7th, Hamas terror attacks against the Israeli people and the hostage taking. The humanitarian organizations are focused on the situation in Gaza. What do people in Gaza need in terms of food? But maybe first, what would you like to say about this situation in general?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me and talking about this subject. The situation in Gaza is just this. It's a human catastrophe. We have millions of people jammed into one area. There's no food, there's no water, there's no fuel. And so what this has generated is people who are desperate, understandably, unable to feed their families. So that's why it's critical that organizations like WFP and others get in there with our food and water, of course, from the other organizations to do just what we need to do, and that's feed. But we need safe passage, and we need sustained passage. So we've been working with the Egyptian government to do just that, so that we can get in. We're working with the Egyptian Red Crescent and supporting what they're doing, and but we still need more. We need a great deal more than what's going on right now.
You were at that border.
Mm-hmm.
You went.
Yeah.
Almost immediately. You went to Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
and you traveled down to that border.
Mm-hmm.
I think at that point, WFP trucks and trucks of other humanitarian agencies were backed up.
Yeah.
What was it like being there, and what has happened since?
Well, it's chaos. The Egyptian Red Crescent was doing their very best, but it was an overwhelming, issue and an overwhelming project. So what we're doing with them is we are logistics. We're offering logistics, and by that I mean we are going to prioritize the loads, be able to assist in palletizing and making sure that it's organized, the manifests are organized, so that when they do have to go through the Israeli checkpoints, that it's easy to do because it's all right there, and there's no question about what's actually on the truck. But it's chaos. I mean, there's everybody in the world is sending stuff, so sorting it out and making sure that the things that they need right now go in first, and the other goods that the blankets and all that will come, on other trucks that come through. But we just need to keep it in an orderly fashion and know what's going on and where it's designated to go, and making sure that it goes the right place. It's a monumental task because of the amount of people involved and because of the emotions. It's something, this is a terribly emotional issue to a lot of people. And our job is to give hope and help by giving food to those who really need it most. And that's what we do.
Yeah. What are your people on the ground telling you about what they're encountering when they are delivering, finally, when these trucks get through, and finally when they're able to deliver some relief?
Well, we saw the reports of the desperation and people rushing the trucks and looting warehouses. They're hungry, and they're desperate. So even though it's a tragic thing to do, I get it. I mean, you do anything to feed your family. So our people on the ground are also hungry now. They have not had their enough food for them and for their families. So as I said, it's a very desperate situation. And the warehousing, it's scattered. That it's because we're down in one place now. We don't have the kind of system that we had before, but we do have a system, and that's what we are good at. And we have people in place to make sure that the food goes to where it's supposed to go.
UN colleagues have died in this war. I mean, you must personally worry for your colleagues
I
every
do.
day.
Oh, that's my biggest worry, aside from everything else. But I mean, I want to make sure our people stay safe like everyone else. They're our family. It weighs on me quite a bit. And I have stayed up at night, and, just worrying and following and seeing what's happened so that I know, at least I can assume that they're okay at times. But in the beginning, we weren't sure. As you know, communication was cut off. So we had no idea where they were or if they were safe, and their families, of course, too. So it's something that has, yeah, I'm sure I have more gray hair as a result of it.
Well, I mean, you haven't. How many months have you been in the job?
Only 7.
It's 7 months. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering because I know that and we'll go into some of the places that you visited, but it is World Food Program and other humanitarian colleagues that's what they do. I think you said is go into situations
Yeah.
that are very harrowing and even dangerous. Have you learned something that you didn't know about UN humanitarian staff since you've joined?
I've obviously had worked with them before in my other lives things that I'd done, and I'd seen them in action, but I never truly understood their commitment, their dedication. As you said, they go into places that are unsafe. They risk their lives, and they're doing it because they believe in what we do, and they believe that everyone has the right to food. They're some of the most incredible people I've ever met, the people that work in the field.
I wonder, just when you think about, and we'll just stay with the colleagues in Gaza now, how do you think they're managing, and how are they coping with this?
Well, I worry about them. This is the kind of thing that, we have most recently dealt with Sudan. We had to make sure that our colleagues were cared for there for mental health, the strain that it put on them, and we're feeling the same for our colleagues that are in Gaza right now. I'd like to be able to get them out and replace them, put new people in, but it's difficult right now, and their families are with them, and so that's obviously an added strain, and because you're so afraid for your family. I cannot imagine, honestly, the strain that this has put on our folks. And as soon as we can offer those services to them, we will, because I think they need it. Who wouldn't after something like this? And so I just each day I pray for their safety, their strength, their dignity, because that's what they're very dignified people. And so I'm so proud of them. I'm so proud of what they do.
So am I.
Yeah.
So am I. And I mean, you mentioned Sudan. Unfortunately, the horrors of what people are going through there have just left the headlines. I know that you were recently in Chad and you saw the refugee situation there, but I mean, you also have colleagues working inside Sudan still trying to deliver. What is that like now?
Well, Sudan is, again, another complicated area. And I'm grateful we were talking about Sudan, because Sudan, plus so many other countries in that region and so many countries around the world, are not in the headlines now. They've been forgotten in all of this. And we cannot forget that there are other situations just as complicated around the world. And that's why WFP needs help. We need countries to help donate and do things. Sudan itself is it's very dicey. As you know, the Jeddah talks have reignited, and hopefully that will lead to something that will enable us to safely get in. But we're not in Khartoum. Right now we are coming in through Chad, trying to get to Darfur. We had some trucks that were lined up to go in, and then things kind of blew up there, and so the bulk of our people are in Port Sudan. on the other side, and working from that angle, so we can get ships in there with food and things as well. It's very complicated, and it's also it's very risky. And as you can see by the migration, people are coming in and they have the horrific things that have happened to them. And so we're not only dealing with a population that's very hungry, but also a population that's been very traumatized by what's going on.
Yeah, I just saw a colleague from UNHCR
Right.
appealing on social
Right.
media for the
Right.
refugees in Chad who you visited, and saying they are desperate, they're
Yeah.
hungry,
Yeah.
and yet we do not have funds. And I'm hearing this a lot, that
Right.
this is a kind of unprecedented situation
Yeah.
where the big donors that could be relied on
Mhm.
are just not stepping
not
up
there.
anymore. What
No.
is the consequence of that? Are you facing that too at
Yes, we are.
WFP?
We are. It's been, donor fatigue, and we had hit unprecedented levels last year and the year before. But the donors are now saying, their constituents are saying, oh, we'd rather have the money put here at home, into things that we need. And it's the same. That's the same with most every region that we appeal to for assistance, U.S. included. So we've had to become leaner. We've had to become more efficient. We've had to make sure that every dollar we can get, we send to the field, because that's where the real work's done. It doesn't Staying at headquarters doesn't do any good. So I'm trying to make sure that we have enough money to make sure our field offices have everything they need, so that they can continue to do their work. But nevertheless, in all of this, I've had to pick and choose. I'm taking food from hungry people and giving it to starving people. That's a heck of a decision to have to make. I've had to look a mother in the eye and say, no, we don't have any rations for you. We've had to take you off the rolls because we don't have enough money. I mean, I'm only human. It's hard for me.
My. Where was that mother?
We were in South Sudan.
Mhm.
And she had described, what was happening, and what her journey had been, and her journey, why her journey began, not only for fear, but also because she was afraid that the rebels were going to take her little boy as a child soldier. So she came across with her children and her son.
I guess then that's a perfect segue into the question, what keeps you awake at night?
Everything. I take everything to heart, and that's why I'm either perfect for this job or maybe not perfect for it. I don't know which, but the situations that we're facing, and the world is facing, unless you have food and water, things are just not going to work well. And so I every night, try to figure out what could we do tomorrow or the next week or the next month to maybe patch this and then move over here and patch that, and it's tough.
I mean,
Yes.
we were just talking about crises in parts of the world that have left the
Yeah.
headlines, Sudan and South
Yeah.
Sudan and Chad. But there's also Ukraine that is also fading away
I
from
know.
the attention of the public. And I believe WFP has quite an operation
We
in
do.
Ukraine. How are you trying to help?
Right, we're doing the kinds of things. We're not just feeding, but we're also working with our demining organizations to help get the mines out of the. We work with the Swiss to get mines out of the agricultural land, so they can then plant again and do work on things like that. I mean, the country's destroyed, and it's the agricultural sector has been leveled by this. And so the ability to be able to not just sustain families, but sustain a country are almost impossible. So getting the land back in place, of course, feeding people, making sure that children, that we have the correct things for children in schools and things, and just doing what we do. I mean, our people are incredible. We have a great country team there, and our leader is a seasoned professional. I'm very proud of him, and he volunteered for it.
How does that make you feel that Ukraine was once the breadbasket, even of the world,
Yeah.
people say?
Yeah.
And now its fields are full of landmines,
Mhm.
and the wheat that needs to get out, some of it's not getting out.
Well, that's been hard because WFP purchased a lot of grain from Ukraine. In fact, a great deal, most of what we would take down to the global south and other countries came from there. And so that's been we've had to readjust how we procure and how we, how we move our grain around, et cetera. And plus now, it's just more expensive to move things. The supply chain is very difficult now because of the cost. And so that's weighed into this now. And I leave all of that to the politicians, but it sounds funny coming from me, but but I do. So I hope, each day I hope that we can come to some kind of agreement so we can just feed people around the world. But I know that that's probably not going to happen. But
It should be
yeah,
just the minimum. Huh?
it
I mean,
is. Yeah.
you became executive director of the World Food
Yeah,
Program in March
I did.
2023, but after a long career in philanthropy and
Mhm.
also politics
Mhm.
with your late husband,
Mhm.
Senator John McCain.
Yeah.
What prompted you to join the United Nations?
Well, I was lucky enough to be appointed ambassador to the U.S. UN in Rome after this, because I do have a history in this kind of stuff, and so I began my tenure there at the embassy there, and it was an incredible experience. I just, I'd never done any kind of public service like that before, and so I not only met some incredible people, but we got a lot done. And the Ukraine war broke out. I mean, we had a number of problems that were going on worldwide. So it was a great, not a great time, but it was an interesting time to be there. And from there, when the opening came at WFP, people approached me and said, "Would you like to do this?" And I really would. I didn't really have to think very long about it because through the years I'd worked with WFP, and they were always the pinnacle of what was good. That God, these people, look what they do. God, wouldn't it be great to be part of that? And now I have this opportunity, and it's the honor of a lifetime for me.
Wow. I wonder then, before that, because coming from a U.S. context, I believe you worked in philanthropy, and how did you get into that? And
Yeah.
was there an inspiration that got you to take up such work?
This question I'm asked all the time, and what I tell them is it's different for everybody that does this kind of work, but it's also the same. It's an experience that you have someplace. It's different for everybody, and I was no different. I had an experience. I was in the South Pacific. I was with my husband. We wound up because of an accident. Not us, but another person had an accident at this little hospital. It was a little, field hospital that was in this place called Truck Lagoon, and I'd never seen things like that before. I'd never seen cats in an OR. I'd never seen, standing water, no hospital beds, no equipment, nothing. And this is a trust territory of the United States, and so I was a little embarrassed also. So I just first began sending supplies, and then we started taking teams in there, and we spread out, and we had medical teams that worked around the world, and it just went from there. We were in Nicaragua post-war. We had a number of, we were around the world quite a bit. We were in Kuwait after first Gulf War. So it took me around the world, and it also showed me the goodness of the world too. And I still believe in the goodness in the world. I really do.
So part of it was because your husband was he senator at that time when he was and you accompanied him and then saw
this was in the 80s
the needs
and
decided that you wanted to have some kind of effect on.
I knew I had to do something. I just couldn't sit back and go home, and I had I wound up, as the story about adopting a baby girl out of Bangladesh that we hadn't planned on doing, and working with Mother Teresa, and it was. So I've had an incredible life.
Let's talk about that, because I believe that was in 1991.
Yeah,
and
91.
You went. There was a terrible cyclone there, and you went to Bangladesh to
they
help.
asked us to bring, and we had various surgeons with us, and so that's what we did. And a friend of mine who was Catholic said, well, why don't you go see if you can find Mother Teresa's orphanage and just see if she needs anything. So of course we will. So it took us a while to find it. And I mean, like a couple of days, because it's buried in this part of Dhaka that's very difficult to get to. And, there's no street signs or anything. Anyway, so we wound up walking in, and there was 150 newborn little girls, I'll say, all right there, all in bassinets, all clean, all, lovely, but they were little girls, and of course the nuns were overwhelmed. And so we began not just giving health checks, but also, acquiring more food for them and things like that. And so at the end of this, there were two babies, particularly one had a cleft palate and the other one had a heart condition. And I said, well, I can get help for them at home. And I had the access. I could get visas, U.S. visas. The nuns got passports for them. And so I said, I'll take them to Phoenix. And of course, it's all legal and all this kind of stuff. And then we'll go from there. And on the way home, I knew I couldn't give this little girl up, one with a cleft palate. And so I
just fell in love with her.
I did. And I walked off the airplane, and my husband knew immediately what I'd done. And he, under his breath, there's a lot of media standing there, and under his breath, he goes, well, where's she going to go? And I said, well, I thought she'd come to our house. And he said, I figured. That's how he met his new daughter.
Wow.
He was the most gracious man alive. He really was. He was a lovely human being, and that was a test of a relationship right there.
Wow. You go to help people in Bangladesh and come home with a daughter.
Now, I will say in subsequent trips, he would tell the team leaders, that I would take with me to make sure one leaves, one comes home.
Because you have other children, right?
I had 3 others. Yes, I do.
Right. What did they think about their little sister?
They loved her. I mean, I tell you what they learned, though, from it is that because her cleft palate was pretty severe, and she was too underweight to have the surgery right away. So, we'd go out in public. And I remember at Halloween, we were home by Halloween, and we had her in a little stroller, and she was all dressed up like a pumpkin, I'm sure, or something. And there was a little girl, and not little, she was like a teenage girl, that looked at her and pointed and said, ooh, look at her. And my kids, they reacted in a way that they said, you're not going to, you don't do that. I mean, they really got after the girl, and I settle down, everyone. We're all going to learn from this. Yeah.
I mean, this surgery is something that can change children's lives.
Yeah.
And there's so many children around the world that are born with it, but can never afford the treatment.
Right. Or don't have access to it. Yeah.
Is this something that you also advocate?
I sat on the board of Operation Smile for years for the very thing, for that very reason. I experienced it with my own child, and so it was wonderful to go with them and advocate for them and watch the transformation in families. It was amazing.
How is she? I believe her name is Bridget.
Bridget.
How is Bridget now?
Bridget's wonderful. She's 32 years old, and she's just a blessing. She really is. And she's of all my kids have a sense of humor, but hers is a very dry one. And boy, she's witty as all get out. She's great.
Has she ever been back to Bangladesh?
No, we tried at one point. We were going to go, and then there was some disruption in Bangladesh. They were having riots and things, so we opted out, and it just never worked after that. So maybe one day.
Just a bit about your family. I understand you grew up in Phoenix, Arizona.
I did, yeah, born and raised.
What was that like? And
it's great. I mean, I have since I've moved to Rome, and I spent a lot of time in New York and Washington, I've come to realize that the weather is much better in Arizona than in other places.
Except in August.
Yeah.
I believe it had the hottest.
I don't even mind August. You're right, though. We had the hottest one on record this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But no, I had a great life. I'm blessed in so many ways. I was an only child. I had 2 parents that were absolutely, we were the threesome. They showed me the world too. We traveled a lot.
But I believe it was not quite rags to riches story.
Yeah.
It was a rags to riches.
Yeah, my father and mother both were. My dad grew up very poor and went to World War II. He became a B-17 bombardier, and I met my mother, at the USO. He was injured. He was shot down and injured, and so when he came back to the States, he met my mother. at the USO place, and it was one of those stories. And he brought her. She was a very Southern. They met in Memphis, and my mother's very Southern, was very proper. And my dad, they get on a train. They have to get off in Tucson to make it to Phoenix. My mom said she stepped off the train and thought she'd gone to hell because it was so hot and it was dusty. And she had her little gloves and her hat on and everything. I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's a different,
Yeah.
totally different
And
environment.
Arizona now is a rather sophisticated place, but in those days it was not.
It was Wild West.
It was Wild West. It was.
Well, in that Wild West, how did then the rags become riches?
My dad was smart. He's a smart man, and he understood business, and so he was the Anheuser-Busch beer wholesaler, but he acquired the brand because the guy that had the brand didn't want it. He thought it was a lousy brand, and he just wanted to get rid of it. And it cost my parents $10,000 to get it, and they sold everything, sold their cars, sold everything they had. They sold and borrowed to be able to buy the brand line, and it exploded. You know what happened? I mean, it's the biggest brand in the world now. So.
How did he ever tell you like how he knew? And your mother, how did they know that it was?
He used to just say, "Honey, it was luck," And I think luck was part of it, but I also think that my dad's intuition, and because he was also one of the kindest men you could ever know, and he was just this. He had an innate sense that he could judge people, and he just knew he. Obviously, I miss him very much. He was very critical in my life to. Helping me become what I could do. Neither one of them went to college. My dad barely graduated from high school. It was one of those stories.
But they encouraged you to.
They absolutely did. They encouraged me to do everything.
And in 1979, you met your future husband, John McCain.
Yes.
Where did you meet?
Oh, we met in Hawaii. My parents and I were there. It was spring break. I was a school teacher at the time, and we were there on spring break. And the gentleman who was the assistant to the SINCPAC admiral was there, and they said, "Would you like to come to a reception we're having?" There's a group of senators on their way through to China. Sure. And so we go into this reception, and there's this man, and he's on his dress whites, and anyway, but it was how I physically met him though, is that Joe and Jill Biden introduced us. Joe Biden and Jill came over and said, "You've got to meet him," and pulled us both like this.
Matchmaking.
Mm-hmm, matchmaking. So I had a nearly 40-year marriage because of Joe Biden.
You have a lot to thank him.
I do.
For.
I do.
Wow.
I do.
You mentioned that you obviously miss him an awful lot.
I do. Yeah, I do.
I mean, how does his legacy affect your work?
Well, a lot of us play this game. What would John McCain do? And I do the same. But I think for me, it's been the first realization was the impact that he had on the world, because everywhere I go, everyone's got a John McCain story. They, what they did, what they saw, how they met him, whatever it may be. And I love listening to it. And so his impact in all of this, and I think his impact on me in terms of service to the world and doing the right thing, which isn't always the easy thing. The lessons that he taught me. And of course, his prison experience was a large part of that. And so the lessons he would teach our children, and how we would, how you deal with life when things aren't so good, kind of thing. So I remember a lot of those things that he taught my children, and certainly me as well, and I've applied them, I hope, and I just hope he's happy with me. I hope he's looking down going, "Yeah, you're doing okay."
I think he would be pretty proud of you, but maybe it also helps you when you're seeing people in such adversarial situations that you keep going.
Yeah, I do, and it's for me, it reminds me of John never had the attitude that he had somehow been mistreated. He called it an experience. He was a professional soldier. He knew the risks, etc. Unlike some of our ground troops who were not professional soldiers. So he viewed it that way, and he viewed and as you know, he wound up helping normalize the relations with Vietnam. So when I see things on the ground where I see terrible mistreatment or terrible situations, etc., I think of what cruelty the world can afflict on people, but also the incredible sense of drive that the other portion of the world has about making sure that the world's a better place. So you see both sides of it in the work that I do, and I like that. Occasionally I need a good day. I like a good day occasionally. And that's what kind of drives me, is the incredible spirit of people around the world, especially the folks in the UN.
Cindy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Awake at Night. We'll be back soon with more incredible and inspiring stories from people working against huge challenges to make this world a better and safer place. To find out more about the series and the extraordinary people featured, do visit un.org/awake-at-night. Do subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and please take the time to review us. It helps more people find the show. Thanks to my editor, Bethany Bell, to Adam Paler, Josie LeBlond, and my colleagues at the UN, Katerina Katiti, Roberta Politi, Geneva Damayanti, Tulin Batiki, Becerra Kostova, Angelica Davis, Carlos Macias, and the team at the UN studio. The original music for this podcast was written and performed by Nadine Shaw and produced by Ben Hillier. Additional music was by Pascal Wise.